sometimes things don't go right. Sometimes you make mistakes. Sometimes a situation isn't always roses and daisies, and that's okay. The real solution to having less stress at work and to feeling so blah and stressed out all the time about work. Hello and welcome back to my channel where I help you slay your career and cultivate the successful life you deserve. For the best career advancement advice, make sure and click the subscription button and the notification bell. I release 2 new videos each week. Are you feeling stressed AF at work? If you are, this video is exactly for you. I'm making it just for you, my friend. Stress at work is totally normal. We all have it. It is something that always exists. But especially right now with everything going on in the world, all of our stress might be feeling a little bit more elevated. So in today's video, I wanted to share with you some simple strategies on how you can handle stress at work and in life. My most important strategy is going to be the last one that we talk about, so make sure that you stay all the way through. If you are ready to learn my stress relief tips so that you can have less stress at work, let's tap that like button and jump straight into it. The first tip that I have for you to handle stress at work is to breathe. And I know that this sounds really dumb because it's really obvious, like you're breathing right now, I bet. I hope you are. The power of breathing is that simply taking a really nice deep breath can be something that helps move you from a reactive state where positive things don't always happen into a more active state where you can react accordingly and with less stress. If we look into the science behind it, there's a couple of different things at play. First of all, if you're facing acute stress, which I'm going to come back to in just a minute, you are going to be having an amygdala response. That's your fight, flight, or freeze. It's the most primitive area of our brain from when we were cavemen and we were facing challenges like saber-toothed tigers. Now, you probably won't find many of those lurking around at work. However, your reaction to any stress at work is essentially the same. Taking time to breathe is actually going to allow the chemical in your brain that actually enacts that amygdala response time to dissipate so that you can move into your logic center of your brain. The other component is our brain just needs oxygen, especially if we are going to be doing some deep thinking. We want to be thoughtful in our actions, especially if we are in a very stressful situation. We are going to be able to think better and act better when we have that oxygen for our brain. So really, breathing is always your friend on a day-to-day basis, but especially in times of stress. Now, when you are taking that moment to breathe, one of the things that I want you to be asking yourself is moving into my second tip to handle stress at work, and that is getting to the root of the problem. The question I want you to sincerely think about and answer for yourself here is, what is the real problem here? The thing that we're feeling stress about and maybe feeling anxious or reactive or having conflict about might not actually be the source of the problem. It might just be the straw that broke the camel's back, or it might be the thing that's in front of us that we can actually identify. For example, one of the ways that I've seen this play out with my clients in the real world is having a lot of stress about inbox management. They're being bombarded in their inbox with action items and things to do, and they have to reply to this and do this and think about that. So yeah, it's their inbox stressing them out. But what is actually underlying that stress is that they don't feel like they're in control. If this sounds a little bit familiar, drop an I relate down in the comments below. One of the things that I think, especially when I work one-on-one with my clients, that always surprises people is that they're usually coming because there's a problem, there's an obstacle, but it's often deeper than what we actually think it is. So until we get to the point where we really understand the problem, we're not going to be able to solve for it. And that means that we're going to have stress. We resolve that thing, we are going to feel that stress in a different way. Now this one, I know it's a lot easier said than done, but I promise you that investing time into this step is going to be something that is really helpful. For my next tip to handle stress at work, I want to come back to something that I mentioned earlier, which was talking about acute stress. And that is that you need to consider perspective. And there's a couple layers to this, so let's dive into it. There's 2 questions that I have for you to help you gain perspective about your stress at work. The first is the stress a bad thing? So often when we're talking about stress, it's a bad thing, and we're talking about all the negative impacts of stress, and we feel so stressed out, and as soon as someone says that they're stressed, we automatically know that that's a bad thing. But the thing is that stress can be a good thing. If we actually look at it from the psychology behind stress, there are 3 different types of stress. One is good, two are bad. The first kind of stress is eustress. This is good stress. This is the stress that is motivating us. So sometimes if we're thinking about our stress and maybe we are feeling a little bit insecure or we're facing a little bit of imposter syndrome on a project that we're working on, the thing is that this isn't always a bad thing. This stress can actually really motivate us to invest our attention, our energy, and our best effort to accomplish the outcome that we're really going for. And without this good stress, we might not actually come into it with the gusto that we're coming with it now, that we're quite honestly a little bit terrified that we're in over our heads. On the other hand, we have the bad stressors. We have acute stress, and this is actually triggered by an event. So think about you get a call from an unhappy customer or unclear instructions from your boss, and there is a tight deadline to meet it and you're not sure what you're even supposed to be doing. These are acute stressors. They're kind of sudden and instantaneous. Then we also have chronic stress, and there are different types of chronic stress that you might experience at work. One great example, and I know one that many of you guys that watch my videos have actually faced or are facing, is being in a toxic work environment. Chronic stress is the stress that is always present. For example, if you have a toxic manager, that stress of having them is constant, even though there is going to be also acute stressors which they bring into your world. Now, one thing that can be interesting, and it's not true in all cases, but I want you to be open about it and I want you to consider it for those bad stressors that you have in your life. Sometimes our bad stressors might actually be a good stressor in disguise. Like maybe the bad boss that we're dealing with is really giving us the motivation when we kind of are stuck in our careers to take that next step to either get the promotion or our dream job. And let's just face it, anytime that we have the opportunity in life to take lemons and make a delicious lemon-tini, we need to drink that shit up. The other question that I have regarding perspective for you is, does this really matter? And be honest with yourself here. If you come back to this stressful situation in a year, are you really gonna care about it? I think in our day-to-day jobs, we just get so entrenched in the things that we're doing and we end up getting really stressed over benign things because of course all of the little things add up to the really big things. But in the sequence of events, is this something that is going to really truly have impact on your career and in your life? If the answer is yes, then yeah, it's pretty much a valid stressor. But if it's something that a year from now isn't really going to matter, then maybe you can stress out a little bit less about it. And this brings me into my next tip to handle stress at work, and that is to regain control. Especially if you're a control freak like me, one of the easiest ways to feel an enormous amount of stress is to not be in control of a situation. In my opinion, if you are not in control, you are in chaos. And when you're in chaos, things start to take over your life. This doesn't mean that things are completely off the hook and that you're reckless and things like that. Really, chaos just means that you aren't in control of your actual day and the things that are happening, because this means that you can't be sure, you can't be confident that you're going to achieve your career goals or even your to-do list today. When you have stress at work, ask yourself this question: what can I control? And this is no way insinuating that you have control over all of the things. You really don't. You're dealing with other people unless you work all by yourself and then you're just stressing yourself out. But that's probably not the situation. You're probably dealing with your boss, with coworkers, with other teams, with customers, with partners. But in this full situation, which is causing you stress at work, what are you actually in control of? If the stress is more aggregate and it's because of a lot of things, one of the things that I do encourage you to consider is establishing some work-life boundaries if you haven't already done so. Because when we think about things like dealing with difficult coworkers and your inbox taking over your life, or you feel like you're working all of the time and that's the thing that's causing you stress at work, this is something that can be a fix for it. Now, when we think about the chronic stressors like the nonstop email notifications, work taking over your life, dealing with toxic coworkers, are there work-life boundaries that you can set that will help alleviate them? And then of course, in a more acute situation, think about the things that you are actually in control of. When you have a stressful situation at work, there's going to be a ton of stuff that isn't in your control, that it's totally up to other people, who they decide to be, what they do in the situation. But you can always control the things that you are in control of. This includes your energy, your effort, your work-life boundaries. All of these things really add up. And when you're clear on what you can control, it actually helps you release the stress and worry and anxiety about all of the things that you aren't in control of that are stressing you out at work. And this actually brings me directly into the next point. And this is one of the things that if you're trying to handle stress at work, it's a step that seems really obvious, but so many people miss this one. And that is to do a priority check. I can't tell you how many times I've spoken to a client that is just stressing themselves and running them into the ground over something really tiny that either wasn't something that was the most important thing or didn't really have a huge impact. When we don't understand how things are prioritized at our company, on our team, and for ourselves, it's really easy to enter a state of overwhelm because then you just have all of this stuff to do, and that creates a lot of stress at work. However, when you know exactly what you should be focusing on, the impact that you are supposed to be having, and how you can best have an impact at work, this allows you to focus on all of those things. It also makes you feel a lot better about the things that you don't need to stress out about because you don't really maybe even need to do, or at least don't need to do right now. This is honestly one of the things that knowing your unique awesomeness quotient, your UAQ, has a huge impact on. If you don't already know your UAQ, I want you to register for my workshop and check it out after you watch this video, because I'm going to help you figure that out so that you know what your priorities are. Ultimately, if you cannot escape stress at work, why not just stress over the right things that are actually going to move your career forward and are going to bring you satisfaction in your career? My next tip is one that has nothing to do with my channel, but it's something that I feel like has been coming up more and more in my videos, and it is because it has such an enormous impact on our well-being and on our stress levels. If you want to cope with stress at work, I highly recommend that you find a way to get some exercise in. Now, this isn't all about like doing some like crazy high intensity HIIT training or, getting really ripped or anything like that. Not at all, unless that's your thing. Because when I'm talking about exercise here, it's not about looking hot, and it's not even necessarily about all of the health benefits that exercise actually offers you. It's because exercise is actually going to give you 3 immediate benefits. First of all, when you exercise, when you move your body, you are going to decrease your levels of 2 stress hormones, adrenaline and cortisol. The second immediate impact that exercise has is that if you change your scenery, it changes your mind. Especially if you're facing a different work problem, something as simple as going for a walk and just seeing different things and getting some clarity is going to be what actually gets you through that stress at work, or just makes you feel a little bit better so that you can tackle it when you get back to the office or to your home office. And the third isn't necessary, but most of the time when I talk about exercise, it's something like going for a walk or going for a good range run if you're me. And this is something that just getting outside and breathing in, nice, clean air. Hopefully it's clean air unless you're in New York City like me, in which case it's, más o menos. But nonetheless, getting outside, especially into the nice, cold, crisp fall air that we have right now, is going to be something that feels really, really good and decreases your stress levels. And I promise you, I'm not becoming a health and fitness channel, but this is something that, especially like for me, in terms of stress management, the best way that I have managed my stress throughout my career has been through exercise. And once you have that habit, it becomes the first thing that you do. And if you're going to go to any vice in a stressful situation, exercise is a lot better than a lot of the other vices that we might have. Like my number 2 vice, which is gin. Getting back to something a little bit more traditional and less sweaty is my next tip to help you handle stress, and that is to commit to either your next step or to change. If your work stress is because you are absolutely miserable at your job, you hate your company, you're in a toxic workplace, then you need to commit to actually changing that situation. And then you commit to your next step. Or if you're more in a scenario of acute stress, just identifying what you are going to do next or what you can learn from the situation is going to be something that is immensely, immensely helpful. I think it's really easy when we're feeling stressed out at work to just kind of stay in that place. I know it sounds really ridiculous, but doing nothing is a lot easier than doing something, especially if you're feeling kind of miserable because of the stress that you have at work. And sure, when you actually start actioning those changes or taking those steps, you're going to feel a lot better and your stress level is going to alleviate, especially as you get closer to resolving the actual cause of stress at work. And this brings me into my last tip to handle stress at work, and that is to stop being so hard on yourself. So many of my clients, and I know so many of you, are just, you're perfectionists at heart. And I know how hard it is when you just want to be your best, bring your best, and really succeed in every single situation. But you know what? Sometimes things don't go right. Sometimes you make mistakes. Sometimes a situation isn't always roses and daisies, and that's okay. The real solution to having less stress at work and to feeling so blah and stressed out all the time about work is to actually take some of the pressure off of yourself. And when you're ambitious and when you're tenacious, this is so much easier said than done. Trust me on this one. But the easier that you can go in yourself and really seeing that your career success journey is a marathon. It's not a sprint. It makes a lot of the stressful situations that you're facing at work or career obstacles that you're trying to navigate so much easier. And I think one of the ways that we can really do this is to make sure that we are cultivating a positive attitude. Because when things don't go your way, and especially if you're a perfectionist by nature, just like me, it's really easy to feel defeated when things don't go right or don't go the way that you were expecting them to go. However, when you cultivate that positive mindset, it allows you to see the opportunity in every situation, which is ultimately going to be something that elevates your career. If you haven't already watched it, I want you to go and check out this video to cultivate a more positive attitude at work. If this video was helpful, make sure and give it a thumbs up. This is something that really does help my channel here on YouTube, and I greatly appreciate when you give it a thumbs up. As always, my friend, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you being here. I hope you found it helpful, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.